Okay, guys, ready to do this thing? No audio. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm going to relaunch this thing. Sorry. Well, I got more people into the chat room, so let's just take it from the beginning. All right, good evening again, guys. I know I hit that mute button on my mixer, but something must have not taken, so sorry about that. We are coming up again, and we just got clear skies in this part of Texas, as you probably saw earlier, so let's head to the charts. You've probably seen a little bit of this as we rolled along. Enhanced risk up in Nebraska, or North Dakota, up into northern Minnesota, also just west of Rockford into the Quad Cities area. I was trying to bring up the radar there, so little activity up to the north, but you can see in the plains we're pretty much shut down, so that's indicating a little bit of capping going on. Okay, before I go much further, let me take a quick look at the chat and make sure everything's okay this time. I'm glad to see 17 people checked in here. Megan John here. Burl Leitch and David Moore. Mick is here. Good morning from Queensland, Australia. Sue M. Megan John reporting crazy weather up there. Bo Echo's the main threat. Multiple damage reports already out. Megan John, you'll have to remind me where you're located. I think Minnesota. Ryan Toomey's joining us. Sue M. Dave Dunnett. Kevin McKinney. Good to see you all. Big delays out of the Midwest tonight from Ryan. Brian saying Chicago O'Hare Midway all backed up with delays at 4 hours or more currently. And during that first go of the live stream, I tried to bring up the radar for the Quad Cities so we could look at that, and there it is. There's the mess right there, all the way from Chicago back to Rockford and to the Quad Cities. Let me see if I can animate this a little bit. There we go. One little storm here near Kankakee, another one near Joliet, and this other one here southeast of Rockford. So a few good storms there. It doesn't look like anything right in the Chicago O'Hare area. So that would be up in this region right there. Looks fine, but I would imagine this is probably interfering with the approaches into Chicago, and they're probably having some congestion from that. But yeah, definite bow echo structures. You see that right there? So that's one thing you're going to be looking at when you assess radar, is not only the storm scale features, but the actual patterns. So that would be an example right there. And even the storms up to the north, those appear to be having a bowing appearance. So I'll try to bring up the SCU-T and we'll see what might be causing that. I can tell you right off the bat, this usually means there's a lot of dry air aloft. Okay, heading to our charts. 250 millibar analysis, looking like this tonight. Pretty much as a zonal flow across the northern tier states into the Great Lakes. We got to keep in mind that this is this morning, but we saw 25 knots there at the Davenport Station. A little stronger up to the north, 50 knots there, and you can also see the presence of a ridge. So there might have been a little bit of capping during the day, which has finally broken. There's the chart at 500 millibars. That's indicating a large medium wave across the Dakotas and possibly a couple of short waves moving through that flow. I think that's probably one right there. There's a shortwave ridge. So you see that anticyclonic turning of the wind field. And then, yeah, those are the only waves I can really pick out there. 700 millibar temperatures definitely showing some of the warmer temperatures making it all the way into Illinois, 10 Celsius at 700 millibars. That's getting up into the capping levels of inhibition. And then at 850 millibars showing dew points around 17 Celsius. That's going to be about 63 Fahrenheit in Illinois. So very good moisture all the way up to the 5,000, 6,000 foot level. And there's a look at those storms, showing the one there in Nebraska. We saw that earlier. Let me see if I can put this on Illinois. And it kind of looks like a mess due to all the anvil debris. But those overshoots definitely showing up, one after the other, from south of Chicago out all the way to Rockford. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then another little cluster up in southeast Wisconsin. So quite a bit of activity there approaching the Chicago area this evening. Elsewhere, pretty quiet here in Texas, and you can see the Kansas and Oklahoma area completely shut down. We've got the sea breeze active in Texas, and there it is, working its way northward. And then the monsoon, wow, that's a classic monsoon pattern. Looks very similar to what we had yesterday, pretty much in the same position too. There's a quick look at the water vapor imagery. We can see that the drier air pretty much over Kansas and Oklahoma, about what we would expect there. I'll try to pull up a sounding right in the middle of that stuff, maybe Norman or Topeka or Springfield. And we'll also try to look at Illinois. Hopefully there's not too much convective contamination. Yeah, this is the vorticity chart. This is good at showing short waves. Okay, so there's the legend up there in the top left. So earlier today, you can see, well, there's some ridging right in there. It looks like by the popcorn-shaped appearance of the field here, I think there's a little bit of contamination of the vorticity field there. Very strong trough, shortwave trough, moving through the base of this larger scale trough here in Alberta. So that's helping to break down that ridge there. And then for this evening, right at this minute, this is the pattern we're looking at. Probably a little bit of an indication of maybe a wave through Wisconsin down to Iowa. Looks like maybe a bit of ridging right there, kind of flattening out. And for the Great Plains, high pressure. Not only where that high is, but where the center of the flow is anticyclonic. So right there over Dodge City. Higher heights over Springfield, but the anticyclonic flow right over Kansas. So not much of a chance of thunderstorms in that area. And you can see that the southern U.S. underneath that southerly flow. All right, let's take a look at the soundings. We're going to take a look at a couple of different areas this evening. I'm going to start out with Norman, underneath that big ridge We'll look at a profile where things are hazy, not much rain going on, clear skies. And yeah, we see lots of dry air aloft. And even right just above the surface, there is dry air. Dew points at 5,000 feet right there, on the order of about 53 Fahrenheit there. So once you start mixing the air during the day, as you get heating, these upper 60s dew points start dropping pretty quickly. So you mix the dry air to the surface, and you've got dew points falling during the day into the lower 60s and upper 50s. And that, of course, is not good for convection. So if we try to mix that and then get an afternoon parcel of maybe 90 Fahrenheit, there's our afternoon parcel right there. And then the lift goes like that. So not only do we have no instability, but we've got a ton of capping. So there's convective inhibition right there. A little weak layer around just north of, just above 700 millibars, and then more inhibition down below that. So to really change that, what you need is more moisture coming up from the south. You need better flow from the south, and you need cooler temperatures aloft. And usually an upper level, a major upper level trough will help prepare the upper levels like that. And also the release of potential instability. That's where you have lifting of the entire column, and the whole thing lifts adiabatically. So this part of the sounding shifts over here, and this part of the sounding doesn't shift over there so much because of latent heat. So you end up with this part of the sounding being right here. So you basically have a very cold over very, very warm situation, and then you get quite a bit of thunderstorm activity. So that's the reason troughs are so important for generating thunderstorms. They don't trigger them, but they help prepare the environment. Okay, let's try a sounding for Lincoln. This is in Illinois, and this is where they're getting that thunderstorm activity. Looks like a bit of a different pattern. I mean, there is a little bit of warm air aloft, but look at the depth of that moist layer. You go right above the surface, and you're retaining moisture all the way up to about 5,000 feet. So that's very significant. A lifted parcel is going to look like this. We add maybe 88 degree Fahrenheit highs, and then we lift that. Wow, look at the cape we have here. So that's going to be easily about 2,500 to probably 2,500 cape right there, and then just a little sliver of inhibition. And that layer is from about 6,000 up to about 8,000 feet. And then what we have in Texas, Fort Worth, that's going to be just more of the ridging, and you see lots of dry air aloft. And you can see the dew points falling as you go upward with height. So your mixed dew points during the afternoon are going to be looking like this. It's almost enough for a few showers, but there's just enough convective inhibition to keep things kind of shut down. Probably a strong boundary in the area would help overcome that. Then for something different, we're going to go to Tucson and try to look inside the monsoon air. And there you go, that's Tucson. That's pretty unusual for them. You can see right above the surface, pretty high dew points for the deserts. Those are dew points of about 55, 57 Fahrenheit. And yeah, you can definitely get some good storms out of that. Add in temperatures of 95. And there's just no capping at all. And very good instability. And then we'll take a look at one more sounding. Let's go to Brookhaven, New York, and look at New York City. Just out of curiosity, lots of dry air aloft. We have westerly flow. We have strong jet stream winds, 85 knots up there, and we have a fairly conditionally unstable temperature profile. So that means it kind of follows these wet eddy bats. Just a little bit of inhibition right here at about 4,000 to 5,000 feet. A little bit of dry air just above the surface. So with a high of 86, you're going to be looking at a lifted parcel, something like that. So not much instability and a little bit of inhibition. Okay, so that's a look at about 4 or 5 soundings, and I think we're about ready to head into the forecast. I decided to pull up the precipitable water. Actually, let's look at the tropics real quick, just in case anything's changed. You can see we've got quite a bit of activity in the eastern Pacific, but that's not really heading our way. What we're more concerned about is the Atlantic. And while NHC decides to load, I'm going to pull up the polar orbiter data. And let's start out with that dust layer. I'm going to pull up the aerosol optical depth. And we can see a few patches of dust, one coming right off the West African coast, another one crossing through Dominica into far eastern Cuba. Let me see if I can put up the coastlines here. I know this might be a little bit hard to read. Well, that helps a little bit. You can see Florida right there. But anyway, there's a pretty good plume of dust coming westward. So that's probably just about all the way to Florida. It might cut down a little bit on visibility out there over the weekend. We'll try to take a look at that tomorrow. And then, yeah, there's this other area. In between, we've got a few easterly waves moving through the flow. There's one there. We can see another one almost all the way to Florida. And then NHC looking pretty quiet there. 5-day outlook. It's as dead as a doornail. So let's look at the patterns here in the U.S. Let me get this centered here. Okay, we're looking at precipitable water here. You can see pretty good cyclogenesis in the high plains right there. So that's bringing the moisture northward. And we can also see the indication of maybe a warm front. See that troughing right through here. And that's a little bit north of where we saw it yesterday. I think we had it running something like that yesterday. So the storms we have in northern Illinois just ahead of that warm front. Quite a bit of moisture pooled ahead of that. So let's see what happens over the next few days. Looks like that migratory low just kind of moves eastward through Illinois. And there it goes on Saturday. Here in Texas, we're bringing up some higher precipitable water values. Moisture coming northward. Oh yeah, look at this. Really comes up here 2 inches. So we may see an increase in precipitation, especially along that sea breeze. That may be a factor. Maybe seeing rain here on Sunday. The other system up in the Great Lakes, that's kind of pushed eastward. There it is, moving into New York. In behind it, high pressure. There it is over James Bay into Minnesota. And that high is important because it's helping to bring cold air back in behind this system. Let's see, Monday and Tuesday, the migratory high covers the Great Lakes, so weather looks pretty good in that area at the start of the work week. Pretty strong high, and that's pushing the front southward. So we're going to see that boundary coming down into the Carolinas and into Georgia You can see all that moisture just kind of stacked ahead of that. So precip chances will be going up quite a bit in the southeastern U.S., possibly into eastern Oklahoma there. For Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, looks to me like that boundary just kind of gradually sinks southward. It's a little less clear what happens in the central U.S. Looks like maybe Arkansas, Missouri, boundary might be in the area there. Got more cyclogenesis out in the Central Plains. And looks like we got a tropical storm coming off the south part of the map. Let me see if I can get to that. Yeah, there it is right there, south of Baja California. Looks like more of a downslope pattern for next weekend. We see flow pretty much out of the southwest, so it may be kind of a hot day in Texas. Pretty good low pressure right there in Kansas, leading edge of the front, looks like that. So precip chances pretty high for the last day of July in Missouri and Kansas. And there it goes. Front coming in behind it. So chances of rain coming up in the Red River region right there. So that's going to be Tuesday the 1st. So lots of boundaries in the southern U.S., and we're not going to know the exact position this far out. That's going to depend on how much convective activity develops. That can really reinforce the boundaries, or if it doesn't develop, that may keep the boundaries kind of far north. So beyond 4 to 5 days, we'll just kind of have to wait and see how that pans out. Looks like some of that moisture making it up into Arizona. Look at that. In fact, let me go way back and look at the monsoon. Okay, we can see the monsoon right there over the Four Corners in Arizona. Got some good 1.5 inch precipitable water. Phoenix, Yuma, Tucson right there. Then over the next week, yep, just a continuation of rain, afternoon thunderstorms in that area. They get a break later on. And then it looks like the next slug of moisture comes up around the last day of June or July. And we got the remains of this hurricane. Looks like that makes it pretty far north. So that's going to be worth monitoring. Some of the moisture making it up into Southern California right there. So that's around the 2nd and 3rd and 4th. So we got some weather out there. We'll just have to wait a while for that. There's not much going on right now. Quick look at chat. Let's see here. Okay, I'm looking at the chat. I didn't get confirmation that the audio is working. Let me take a look at the mixer. Yeah, this is the mixer I'm working with. It's showing, yeah, my microphone's working okay. So hopefully you were all able to hear the webcast tonight. Let me know. Got 18 people on and we're not losing viewers, so I think we're probably okay. Alright, a little bit of buffering there. Some people have lagging. I did do one different thing. I set this thing to constant bitrate instead of variable bitrate. I've been kind of trying to work with the settings to get the stream looking better. So I set this to constant bitrate, and hopefully that's not causing too much problem. I'm going to see if I can switch this back in the middle of the stream. I don't know if that's going to take right away, but maybe that'll fix your buffering problems. I may go back to the how we had it earlier. No storms in southern Indiana, despite what the charts show. Need rain for the garden. Greg Schultz seeing subsidence over Tornado Alley. Some buffering being noted by some of the viewers earlier. Jenny from Milwaukee checking in, and Greg Schultz from Wisconsin. Wisconsin kind of night apparently from Andrew. His wife is from New Berlin. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad we've got people way up north. A little bit of distribution around the U.S. I had started this channel originally as a Texas forecasting channel, but on a day like this there's nothing going on, so I decided to kind of increase the scope to nationwide, and we've been doing that for the past year. Jenny says, I appreciate the channel. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. So humid there. Sue M says, good Cape, dew point there near 75. She's in Indiana. Megan John says, storms popping up in front of the line in Minnesota. Okay, audio is good. That's good to hear. I can usually tell when there's a problem when I'm looking at the graph here. Yeah, this is my... Yeah, you see this blue line? This is the number of viewers. When that's going down, that usually means people are having a problem and heading elsewhere. So it's been going up, so we're picking up more and more viewers as the webcast goes on. And this can also tell me when the discussion is getting boring, because then it'll start going down. So that's kind of a neat little tool to have. All right, I was going to pull up a radar real quick for Minnesota. There's the storms in Illinois. Latest frame looking like this. We've got storms moving into the Chicago metro area. Looks like around Midway Airport. Getting hammered by this hailstorm. Velocities in the storm, well, lots of range folding, so I can't really tell you. Let me set the motion vector here real quick. Of course, this is up at about probably 15,000 feet in the storm, so probably not too much help. But anyway, let's head off to Minnesota. And I'm kind of concerned we're going to have to go even further north in Minneapolis. So while this is loading, I'm going to take a look at the SPC charts. I can see they've had a lot of, where did that go? Yeah, a lot of wind damage in northern Minnesota right there. That's been the main threat during the day today, wind. We do got a tornado watch out for northern Illinois and eastern Iowa, and that's just north of that little warm front that we showed you pushing northward. And the main storms at this time, yeah, they're up in, looks like just north of St. Cloud. Just a little bit out of range. Duluth radar would probably pick this up better, but you can definitely see the bowing structure on these cells right here. So that's indicative of wind damage. These storms here, not seeing bowing so much here. So let me go ahead and pull up just one more sounding. I'm going to pull this up for Minneapolis. Okay, there's the Minneapolis sounding this morning, and you can see the presence of lots of dry air. There's some right there in that layer. A little more moisture in this layer right here. Very shallow, low-level moisture. This looks like maybe some convective contamination because we're not showing that very deep moisture that's feeding these storms here. Maybe an evening sounding. Let me see if I can do that. Let me go to 22 at 0Z. Minneapolis coming up again. So yeah, this is showing up a little bit. Okay, it's looping. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, so this is a little bit more representative of the parcels. This is from about an hour ago, and now we can see the deeper boundary layer moisture. So dew points here around 20 Celsius. That's about 68 Fahrenheit, and pretty much the same all the way up through the column. So if we do our parcel lift, we're going to lift this from maybe 85 for a high. Well, we've got some capping. Okay, so things may be a little bit different further northward in the state, but you can see the considerable dry air aloft, and that's really what is instrumental in windstorm events like what we have today. So when you have a lot of that going on, very strong downbursts can be an issue. And this is a problem they don't really have in Florida. Let me see if I can pull up a sounding for Florida. We'll go to Tampa. And normally there we find the column to be pretty moist all the way up and down through that column. A little bit of dry air, but nothing like what we have in the Midwest there. And there's the Miami sounding, very characteristic of a tropical sounding, conditionally unstable temperature profile, and lots of moisture on the moisture profile. And this gives you your afternoon thunderstorms. You construct a parcel with this, and you find just a little bit of capping usually, and some very mild instability all the way up, just enough to get storms and a few showers going. So that's the difference there between Florida and Minnesota, especially on a day like this. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up. Before I go, I think I'm going to go to weather.us, George Kochelman's site. I haven't been on there for several days, but that might be a good way to end the webcast. So I'm going to try to focus on those storms there in Illinois, see what kind of products we got. So I'm going to zoom in on Chicago right there. And we are losing the daylight, unfortunately. Maybe I can run a loop here. So this is one way to get GO16 data, and yeah, there we go. There's those storms there in the Chicago area. And they also do have the infrared imagery, so we can pull that up also. Let's get the color enhancement. This is what you see. This is natural infrared imagery, and this is artificially enhanced infrared imagery. So this is showing you the cold tops. So let me run a loop on that real quick. So usually your colder tops, especially the yellows, that's going to correspond to your stronger storm cells. Let me slow this down a little bit. So if you're lacking radar data, this can be a way of identifying where your strongest rainfall is happening. You take your infrared imagery and you look for the cold tops, and that's going to correspond pretty well to where your heavy precip is down on the ground. And you can see this one cell right there towards the end. Yeah, right there. That's over the Midway Airport area, and that's really showing up. So you can basically take that and assume that there's very heavy rain on the ground. So this is actually a very valuable tool, especially when you get far away from the radars, when you have network outages, or if you're just working in places like Europe or North Canada where there's not much data. Megan John saw 90-mile-an-hour wind velocity readings out there earlier around Naperville. Duluth already had some wind damage reports. 68-degree dew point in Milwaukee. Jenny D reporting a tornado watch for the Milwaukee area, I think. I'm trying to make sense of all the messages I'm seeing here. Quite a bit of chat activity. Greg Schultz says, we appreciate you've expanded your coverage to beyond the wonderful state of Texas. Indeed. And Mary M It's a new name there. Welcome to the channel. Southwest Indiana, very dry, no precipitation for several weeks. And let's take a look at the drought monitor. That might be one good thing to look at. Drought monitor. And that's going to come from the University of Nebraska. And yeah, there's been kind of a light drought in parts of Illinois, maybe extending a little bit into Indiana, but hard hit has been North Dakota, and I guess it's good we're seeing a little bit of precip up in that area since they've really been suffering. A little bit of drought in the Texas Caprock area, but other than that, we're doing pretty well here. Okay, I think that's about all I have for today, and I appreciate you all watching. I'm going to try to get things back on track for tomorrow. I know a couple of you have sent videos, and I do appreciate that, and I will get that worked into the forecast there shortly. So thanks again for watching the webcast, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.